Hi there, welcome to week 4 of our Yoga for Desk Workers course. We're going to talk today about our lower body, hips, legs and feet. We've spent some time up to now looking at how our overall body is impacted on by sitting for long periods. We've looked at our neck and shoulders and our mid-body, our arms and hands, and today we're going to look at our lower body. I think it's worth pointing out, as I always do in all of these presentations, is that it's all connected. So we know that problems with our neck and shoulders can often come from alignment of our lower body and vice versa. So it's just worth bearing that in mind as we move through looking at our lower body, hips, legs and feet. I want to talk about sciatica, which is something that some of you might have experienced, pain from your sciatic nerve. We're going to talk about sacroiliac joint misalignment and dysfunction, which is, is about the way our pelvis is lined up, and that some of the problems that come from sitting to one side or standing to one side, and some of that issues that might give us. I'm going to talk a lot about muscle tightness and in the backs of our hip flexors at the front, and also at the backs of our legs, like our hamstrings. And I'm going to talk as well about feet problems, some of the foot problems we might have in relation to pain or to circulation, because we know how important our feet are at getting blood pumped all around your body. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the sciatic nerve. Now, the sciatic nerve is the longest nerve in our body, and it can get pinched, or it can be the surrounding bone compressing that, and that can give us lots of problems. It can be felt, the pain from sciatic nerve can be felt from your bottom right down the back of your thigh, calf, sometimes right down to your ankle. It can be a strange pain, it can be numbness, burning, tingling, and it can really be quite unpleasant. It can also be exacerbated by things like sudden bending or sitting for long periods, and that seems to be particularly the case in relation to driving for long periods. A lot of people report because you're hunched in the same position for a long time. Sometimes, in terms of the way your anatomy works, it can be caused by a few things or a mixture of things. We've talked about the discs and the between our vertebrae, and how, well, we know as we age that from about in our 20s, they start to become less cushiony. And what can happen is, depending on the position of our spine and the way we're pressing on discs, that we can actually get herniated discs where they bulge right out, and that can cause pressure on our sciatic nerve. We also know that like tightening of the stenosis, it's called, in the spine can also cause those problems. But one of the most common causes of sciatic pain is tight piriformis muscle, and that's just a tiny short muscle that goes from the top of our thigh right through to the bottom, is attached to our sacrum, that kind of flat bone at the back there. Now, the piriformis muscle in a lot of people, actually the nerve, the sciatic nerve actually goes through the muscle, so that we know if we get tight piriformis, it can actually press on it. People who are maybe different anatomically, I think it's very interesting that it's not the same in everybody, that it can actually just sit on either side of the piriformis, so it can be trapped between bones, so if that muscle is tight. So it's a very common. So as we know, the piriformis muscle is one that if we get tightness in it can give us a lot of problems. And some of the solutions to that are, in yoga we call this pose where we know that the muscle abducts, so it takes your thigh away from the body, and it also externally rotates your hip. So this gives us a really good stretch of a piriformis muscle, and that can be one of the remedies to tight piriformis from sitting, can really help with sciatic pain. The other thing that we can do is we can, using a strap, and this is a really good one if you're sitting, we can take, now that's the abduction that I was talking about, we can just take that out, and to give yourself an extra stretch you can take your hand out, and then you always do that on both sides, as you know. The other thing with the seated pigeon pose that I just talked about is you can lean forward, and that gives you more of a stretch, just ensuring that you're not dipping into your bucket seat there. Another problem that we can have with sitting in our lower body is that the sacroiliac joint is the joint that it's where you've got these two bones here, which are the ilium, and the sacrum is the kind of shield-shaped bone in the middle, and there's a joint between on either side. Now the problem with that is that you can often, as you know that you sit in one hip, and sometimes we'll sit cross-legged, or when we're standing, or that we know that we're positioned depending on our dominant hand, where things are on our desk. So there's all sorts of things that can impact on the stability of that joint. And some of the things that we can do to remedy that is all sorts of things about where we're trying to keep our pelvis aligned and horizontal. So things like the goddess pose, which we've done before, where you've got equal weight on both feet, your chest's open, and various poses like that. And I will do in class with you, I'll do something that looks at using a pelvic tilt, so that we can get and trying to kind of get that joint back into alignment again. And squatting, as we know, any kind of squatting is really good for that as well, just keeping it right across and strengthening. Now, one of the other problems that we have from sitting a lot is that we tend to get very tight and shortening in our muscles. And we know that our psoas muscle that comes right from our spine right through, that often that is one of the ones that gives us lots of problems. The other ones are our hamstrings. Now, I think this is a really interesting one where we talk about hamstrings, because a lot of people who have a job where they're seated a lot, often in trying to keep fit and counteract the problem of sitting, is that they run. And you've got a lot of very fit people with lots of problems with very tight hamstrings. And one of the reasons for this is they tend to have very strong thigh muscles. The hip flexors are tight, and their glutes can be long and weak. And this can throw in a lot of problems with very tight hamstrings, so it stops you from stretching out your legs, and it can also give you problems with tight calf muscles, which can give you problems with your knees and your ankles. And that stretch that we did earlier with the strap, that's very useful for that. But also what's really good for that is, and we'll practice some of them later, is some standing poses where we work on strengthening, where we're strengthening our glutes. And do things like leg lifts, and that is strengthening, or a seated staff is another very good one, which is where you just take your legs and your hands out, and that's a really good one that you can just do every time the phone rings, or just after you finish the phone call, just remember to do these. And there's a few others as well that we will come to in our class later in terms of lengthening. The kind of last thing that I want to talk about is, I think that when we're seated a lot, and even if we're fit in other areas of our life, we tend to neglect our feet. And on the class I'll spend quite a wee bit of time on that, because one of the things, we wear shoes all the time, and when we're at a desk, we tend not to get a lot of mobility in our ankles or in our toes, and that can give us lots of problems, as well as all the things we've discussed with circulation. So it's a good idea, just when you're sitting, to be able to spread out your toes and exercise them and get mobility into those wee joints in your feet. We reckon that by the age of 20, you start to lose mobility, you start to lose fluid around your joints, and the best way to lubricate them is to keep them moving. And we can do some weakening up of our feet wherever we're sitting and get some really good stretches there. So we can do some stomps, weighten them up, and that really gets your circulation going as well. Okay, well, what we want to focus on in the class, and I want to summarise and just to reiterate, it's all connected, and we want to get your back and getting our whole body moving every day, our fingers and our toes, getting our back and our hip mobility, keep going that there. Stand up and squat every so often, and just focus on moving your feet while you're sitting. And you can join me later for class. Thank you very much.